a lot of people are now tuning in to Leeds because of the American affiliation. And by the way, that's part of the strategy behind this. But this is a good thing for Jesse. We know the struggles that he had coming in and taking over a team and ultimately righting the ship, but it was plugging holes and emergency type of coaching. And so now he's had some time. They've gotten some players in. They've lost some players. He's had a summer to take a breath and then implement how he wants this team to play. And speaking of players in, two players in the form of Brenden Aaronson and Tyler Adams, who not only come in, but are starting on day one. And Brenden Aaronson scores the goal. So it couldn't have gone better for Jesse Marsch and Ligue in this first game. And from an American perspective, it's awesome. What stood out to you? We'll talk about Jesse on the sideline in a second here, but on the field when it comes to Leeds.
Aaronson just seems like a perfect fit for the Premier League with his energy.
Mm-hmm.
Even I said he played a part in the second goal. He also played a part in the first goal from a defensive standpoint, helping them.
But he did what he does. He's a beautiful pest, and you want him on your team because he's just constantly nipping at your heels and never taking a second off and putting high pressure. And by the way, this is not to say that Tyler Adams was bad or anything like that. I think Brenden Aaronson's going to get rightfully all of the attention, but they were both good and they're both involved in the win. But yeah, he is the big star to emerge from this first game.
So Aaronson has to start for the U.S., right?
So just before we came on air, and we're recording this again on Monday, and I put out the question because, I don't know, a couple months ago when we did our what's your starting lineup now, I had come to the conclusion, even before he had stepped foot on an EPL stage, that Brenden Aaronson I needed to find a way to have Brenden Aaronson in my starting lineup for the U.S. men's national team. And in order to do that, you have to take somebody else off. Now, I went a little sneaky in that I put Weah into a more false nine position and just kind of had Weah, Pulisic, and Brenden Aaronson kind of free-forming all over the place. But here's the deal. I have a new rule, okay? If you are going to say, and there's a lot of people after this game that if they weren't convinced, they're convinced that Brenden Aaronson should be starting for the U.S. men's national team now, and if he's healthy and continues on in the World Cup here in a few months, if you are going to say that, then you also have to say who he is replacing. Because the reality is, I don't think Greg Berhalter's changing into a different false nine. I don't think Greg Berhalter's doing what I'm doing where I'm putting Weah over there. But if you are going to say Brenden Aaronson should start, then he has to take the place of one of Weah, Pulisic, Mosse, Weston McKennie, or Tyler Adams. And those are some really, really good players. So I think the new rule is you should be required to, if you say Brenden Aaronson to start, you have to say who is coming out going forward. Anyway, great result for them. After the game, there was continued fireworks on the sideline between Bruno and Jesse, the two coaches. And listen, we don't know exactly what the brouhaha was, but at the game, at the conclusion of the game, they went at it, and they're jawing and they're screaming and yelling. And after the game, as coaches often do, it wasn't such a big deal or anything like that. Evidently, Lage felt that something had been said earlier that he took offense to. Now, he didn't say exactly what it was, and Jesse didn't illuminate us in anything like that, but it's fun to see. I don't think that there is a sport out there where you are more helpless as a coach manager than soccer. Your work is done during the week. And yes, you can make substitutions. And yes, you can maybe throw in a change of tactics at halftime and do these types of things. But for the most part, you are stranded on an island. And it must be an incredibly frustrating and painful type of existence. Maybe to a certain extent hurts so good, you get used to it. But at the end of the game, a lot of times depending on the score, all of that emotion and that pent-up passion that you have comes out in various ways. I love the coach-on-coach confrontations at the end of the game, and did they shake their hand, and we're reading body gestures throughout, and we're dissecting, what we're reading lips and doing all this kind of stuff. This was great. And don't think for a second that Jesse Marsch, being American, didn't play a part in this. Okay, I'm not saying it was everything, and I'm not saying it was at the top, but hidden and buried under there is that this is an American. This is an American who just won, and that emotion and that passion that all coaches have, I think it can be ignited even more because of the fact that you took umbrage, you took offense to not just a coach and a manager on the other side who just beat you, by the way, but also an American.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.